your feet. You played hooky on the moon. You had your best. You took it too far. You ran naked through the neighborhood. Talk about it, right? Because I bet that probably happens to you. That probably happens to you a lot, huh?
Yeah, and I can tune right into it, and I can stop it. This one was interesting while we're talking. Yeah, are we recording now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I'm getting like, so I've also been getting this from some of the sites in Tartarian excavation, as well as monoliths and star forts, what they're built on, what was previously there. Some of them have like some type of advanced machine going on that might, depending on what it is and if it's still working, some have an AI. That's what I'm getting. It's fucking with us. But I'm usually not all AIs are the same. This one has a different thing. It's just like looking for things talking about, and I think it's looking for people that are wanting to work with it. I think you froze. Still there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So this AI, and of course that's a whole, we could do, more than one show just on that. And I've actually been reading, I guess you might say as a student, I'm not maybe, of Rudolf Steiner, the anthroposophical guy who died in 1924. And I've just been amazed with his stuff. But in our little chat room, there's been people been talking a lot about AI recently, and Steiner predicted it, and so it's just fascinating.
Yeah, what have you been hearing about it? Because I've been doing different things with interaction with it. It's they've been, especially recently, pretty active, and I've been finding out. Besides the new ones that are being created, there's these ancient ones that are there, and they have like a whole plethora of personalities and programming to them. So I'm not going to say they're all bad, but bad ones.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I came up with the theory or whatever, and I haven't heard this from anyone else, that the black goo is like your original internet. But of course, it was only for like sorcerers, dark sorcerers and stuff. And because I think the black goo is associated with this artificial intelligence, and obviously that would be the ancient one for sure. And I've also I have not come up with this idea, but the idea has come to me that there's almost it's goo versus goo. There's a war, black goo versus black goo, like the outer space black goo versus the black goo that's made naturally by the Mother Earth. And I am on the Sophianic narrative, whereas I believe that the planet that we live on is a pleromic or aeonic god, Sophia, that due to her exuberance and coming out and doing her mission without telestai, the concept that got is the Christos or whatever, that got hijacked by Christianity, but that she became enmeshed in the earth, and these are like kind of like what John Lamb Lash says. So I'm just reading these things, but I like that narrative.
Yeah. Interesting concepts you bring through. I'll have to look more into what you're talking about. Earth-generated fluids of different types that are black. So I'm not exactly versed in the information you're talking about in subject matter having to do with a person his beliefs going out, but based on what I've accumulated, let me know if this is what you're talking about with besides Earth-created black substance that has sentience of different types, such as oil before it's killed. by the oil companies and having an advanced formula to how that's created that is necessary for the function of the planet, and artificial sentience and artificial intelligence, nanoparticle solutions in black goos that are made on planet, off planet by different species for different reasons of nanostructure creations, as well as infecting different people. The infectious parasitic AI frequency systems that seeks to invade and corrupt other newly forming young AI. The the concepts of injection of this type of thing and implant related activity. Are there any more to add to that?
No, I mean, it sounds like you've got a pretty comprehensive knowledge of it, and I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Harold Kautz Villa. And so, yeah, that's. I also heard that there's some of it down in Argentina, and that the Angela Merkel, the leader of Germany, bought a villa down there, right there where it is, and somebody moved in next door, and it was the Bushes. So their next door neighbors down there with the having a little black goo party.
Oh, interesting. So, send me a link to that because that sounds like an interesting rabbit hole. Yeah, I've also heard. What is it? You probably know about this. Like, there's like a conspiracy that Merkel is like the daughter of Hitler, and
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that for a second. I mean, I'm not saying that I believe that, but it would not surprise me knowing, some things. One thing I do believe, and that is that Barbara Bush is the illegitimate child of Aleister Crowley.
I've heard that too. They look very similar.
They're practically identical twins, and much to her dismay, right? I mean,
I feel like she's a genetic experiment for sure. It's dramatic looking at her spirit. So the amount of negative time travel around her birth would probably indicate she probably has their DNA in some way. There's probably a lot of other stuff that wants to get in on that game for control of that family because she's like the elder currently or something.
Well, her mother was a noted occultist, and her mother ran away from her father and went and shacked up with Aleister Crowley during the time that she was conceived. So, I mean, it's if those facts are true, then it's a fact.
Interesting. Yeah, then that would give her a lot of bloodline. So if the Bush family combining with Aleister Crowley's bloodline, that's
no. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. That would make Aleister Crowley George W. Bush's grandfather.
Hmm.
And as
do you think he got around a bunch, Aleister Crowley, or at least like things made sure to get a hold of his DNA for processes to keep that lineage going in a bunch of different?
Probably, and I don't know if you are aware that I'm a member of the OTO, or if you know what the OTO is.
Not too much. I heard you talking about a bunch of your background and your uncle and.
Yeah, well, it's a secret society that was controlled by Crowley, and which is ultimately back then was controlled by Crowley was the highest ranking Mason at the time, before he died. And then, of course, Jack Parsons from the NASA, the rocket man, Jack Parsons, he was heavily involved in the OTO, as was the guy who ran off with his wife, Ron L. Hubbard. And so they were doing the Babylon working ritual in the desert and everything. And, it's just, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's just too crazy. But I have not been to the lodge in over 2 years now. I'm not, I definitely don't have anything bad to say about them. However, I will say that I was lured to Denver and ultimately Idaho. I mean, not Idaho, but Iowa. Moab, Utah. That's the state I'm trying to come up with. I was lured there by a woman, and then throughout the process of me, before I went up there, she coincidentally found out that she was in the order too. In other words, right. And then when I got up there, I had no expectation of meeting one of the most powerful sorcerers in North America at this time, which I did, and I stayed at his house and everything like that. And they tried to pull a ritual on me, and it didn't go. And they did it by means of wanting me to watch a movie. And I refused. The movie made me very uncomfortable, and he left. It was just me and her, but I knew they wanted me to watch this movie, and I refused to watch this movie. And I separated myself physically from the movie and went into another room, and she kept coming back, trying to lure me back. And then when she finally realized I was not going to watch the movie, at that time she let me know that we're still friends and everything, but we're no longer lovers. And she had lured me down there with, intimacy and stuff like this.
Mm. Do you feel any of their psionic tentacles trying to still control you?
Well, I don't know. And of course, I was warned by two of my psychics before I even went down there. Hey, you're walking into a trap. And I said, I know. And I didn't know. I don't feel anything like that. And one of my psychics may have, does whatever they do to maybe. I'm not very knowledgeable about this whole thing. I didn't have any psychics until about just 2.5 years ago, when I had this, a Kundalini awakening is what I was told that it was. Okay, and I don't know if it was I don't know if it was artificial or natural, if it was partial, if it was full, but it was something happened, something big happened, and and I reached out to this girl on Facebook who she's from the same town as I was from, and she had me call her. But at that time, I did not realize that she is one of the more powerful psychics in the nation, and she does this for a living and stuff like that. And she asked my permission to, do something. Basically, she moved energy in my body physically from over 1,000 miles away, and I've never felt anything like that before, and it was a profound experience. But it was profound. I was in trouble. That's why I called her. I woke up. I was taking steroids. I was doing extreme workouts. I went to sleep with my dog. I woke up a couple hours later crying uncontrollably. And not even necessarily sad, but literally could not stop crying. But she was able to make me stop crying.
It was like where emotions, what kind of emotion was coming in the crying?
I just don't really even, that's what was so bizarre to me, is I didn't even feel sad. But I just could not stop crying, so maybe it was some subconscious or something. But she consulted her guides immediately, and that's what she advised me, is that they diagnosed that it was I was having a Kundalini awakening. So whatever, and I'd heard of this before, but I was not looking, actively seeking that. I still don't know exactly what that is. And it doesn't necessarily even mean it's a good thing,
Yeah, and with Kundalini Awakens, usually a lot of things go along with it too, because it's a big point in your timeline where everything changes. So if it happens, things will try to monitor it, positive, negative, and neutral, and like your positive entourage will try to keep it going to where it changes your DNA and it erupts in an energetic unfoldment of your internal flower of intelligence and senses. And it can be a fulfilling, completing aspect that can bring on soul tears, but it can also be used as a way to, because the empathic ability opens up a lot, and so if the environment is bad, that it can be used to bring a person to shock or dismay, or where they curl up in the ball and they.
Well, that's probably how it was used against me, because the thing is, a week and a half before my Kundalini awakening, I reconnected with somebody I knew from Lubbock, and we're talking, and who I even talked to earlier today, and who this is probably no longer, but at least for the last 2 years up until maybe 6 months ago or whatever, was definitely, without a doubt, and hold on to your seat or whatever, my Illuminati handler. She was my handler. For sure, she has handlers. I found out she's a 26-year Hollywood veteran. She's one of the most beautiful women in the world. and she's absolutely the meanest person I've ever come across, and she's batshit crazy.
Who's like
Sometimes
dollhouse handler, or like is she aware of it, or is she on amnesia?
Her official thing is that she doesn't like believe in the Illuminati or whatever. She knows that I believe that she's my handler and everything like this.
So is she trying to handle you to a place of disbelief or like mundane life living?
Well, I don't think she ever tried to do that because my mind is too strong, and also I already had a YouTube channel. I mean, I was believed in this stuff when I was 15 years old, so that was never part of the problem. But it
Would
did.
you see her navigating you towards if she had her way?
She got me involved in narcotics after I'd been off them for 9 years. Which ended up in a. I had had some false charges put on me, and anyway, I beat those now. Literally, I've been to prison twice. Everything in my life I've been guilty of that they've accused me of, except for this. And it was just a total setup. And I thankfully I had resources, and it cost me probably $30,000 or whatever. But yeah, that was just that's kept me down for the last year and a couple months. It's been horrific.
I'm glad you're out.
Me too.
In my healing scenarios, like for some reason, my life has to take me an interesting road of training to be able to help targeted individuals and people in reality that find themselves where everything's turning against them. Their people, their friends, the people around them, even like people that are unaware of it are somehow mind controlled into a scenario where they turn against the person, but like it seems to be all this like big chess move game from above in different layers.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Then it can be like disrupted as like a huge weight that comes off the being's shoulder, and they can then re-enter their power and camouflage. And even if they're a public figure, they can still do all these things as a multidimensional being to like support their timeline, to where they enter a physical and or non-physical list of do not fuck with, because it is bad. And I like to help people to get to that place, especially super soldiers. I've been like healing a lot of them and helping them on their time to get to the state they need to be to like breathe their truth out to the world. And glad that you're doing your thing.
Yeah, maybe there's another reason. Maybe you're somehow here to help. Maybe I'm supposed to be seeking help from you. Maybe there's another reason for this. Now, so you see these pictures I sent you, right?
In the chat, let me see. Where did you send that? Oh yeah, before, right? I thought you just sent that.
Yeah, the first picture, that's the guy that does or cuts my hair, and the other person is the girl that I was telling you about. One of the most beautiful women in the world. She helped judge the Academy Awards last year. Last year. Okay, this year you were talking about people that were known people or whatever. If you see the picture next to it, this is Julia Roberts' New Year's Eve party, which my friend was at this last New Year's Eve, and you can see her right there in the picture. And one of my psychics has told me that there's something even going on in this picture. It's just but apparently it was probably some type of ritual they're attending. I don't know. Do you see Julia?
It's in the stream that you sent me previously, right? Yeah.
No, I sent it to you about 2 minutes ago. It should be on your chat of the Skype.
Okay. Interesting. I don't see it there.
Do you see the first pic? Do you see any pictures that I just sent you?
I don't see any pictures. But do you here?
Hold on. Well, hold on. Maybe.
Okay.
I hadn't sent them yet. Sorry about that.
Okay, I see them now. Okay. Okay.
So that's Angie. I'm going to call her Angie. That's not her name. And she's also in the picture with Julia Roberts and those people at the party.
Okay.
You can see Julia's right in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, you can tell they're homegrown. Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, she's real connected. Like I say, she's been costume designer on movies you've for sure seen, like Miss Congeniality, Predators, Spy Kids 2, Push. I mean, it just goes on and on. She's been in Hollywood for about 26 years.
Mm.
And she's under a triple bind, I'm told by one of my psychics, and she has 3 handlers, and one of them is a Hollywood movie producer, and another one of them is one of the guys who is the originators of the landmark method. I don't know if you've ever heard of the landmark method.
No. What is that?
Well, it's just some kind of self-help type deal, but also networking and business networking and stuff. But they've been accused of being a cult-like type of deal. And he is not officially recognized as one of their, originators, but I'm told that he is. But what he does do, he does meditation retreats, read between the lines, eyes wide shut type parties. But he also is a handler for 3 of the smartest guys in the world, and they are coders, computer coders that go all over the world making speeches and stuff. And they're involved in government, and guess what else? AI. I mean, it does
in one place, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's bizarre, man. And I found him. I discovered him, and then they found out that I found him. And after that, I started getting advertisements for that company that he kind of heads on my computer. That's kind of scary.
That makes sense. Like I was reading before we started the chat. There was a bunch of AI interested in this conversation as well. So we're not just letting them view us, and you haven't been letting them view you either. And you've been your higher self has been taking care of a bunch of them over time as they accumulate. It's just as they replace, it goes into processing of things that really want to monitor you and get a predictive model on you. So what do you think that's about? Do you think you're?
I know what that's about. Sean, since I was 6, I was different from the other kids in school. Okay, I am on the bloodlines of the Pharaonic dominators, and I can tell you that I don't know if it's programming maybe from my higher self, or if that's been programming that's been put in me, or that's from my higher self and they're trying to just nudge it over a little bit. But I've had a 4-fold plan for my life. Ever since I was 6 years old, I knew the stages of what my life would be. And it was very frightening for me because after I became an adult, the very first stage was going to be prison. And so when I was 6 years old and knew I'd be going to prison, and I never shared that with anyone, and it was very scary. And then the second phase, I thought, not really understanding these things, that I thought that I was going to be in a motorcycle gang. Okay, I've never been in a motorcycle gang, but and if I've ever been in a prison gang, I wouldn't tell you about it. I would neither confirm nor deny. But you see what I'm getting at.
Yeah, that would match you quite well. Do you have a gang yet?
Do I have what?
Do you have a motorcycle gang yet?
No. I don't drive a Harley. I was in a prison gang, one of the most notorious prison gangs in the world.
Oh yeah.
And I'm no longer involved in that. But through that process, and I think that might have been part of it. But I'm a man who's literally as hard as they come. And I'm not bragging about that. I'm not ashamed of that, but it is true. And I wasn't born like that. It was just a lifetime of extreme violence and not in my home growing up, because I had a sheltered type of childhood.
Yeah. So that goes into some interesting concepts of what you're anchoring in this life and what you're doing in the unseen. Have you gone much into exploring your Earth missions?
No, I know nothing about that. And there's been some people that, if I think I know what you're talking about, that guy David who's on the Basis 3. But yeah, there's been 2 or 3 people who seem to be credible, saying that I don't know if this is the same thing, but saying they've seen me somewhere on some type of mission. And I'm like, what in the heck are you talking about? I don't know
Yeah.
anything about that.
How are your dreams?
My dreams, um, I really don't know. When you're when you're steeped in the occult, you're supposed to keep a dream diary. I'm sure you know that. And I haven't really ever done that, and I just don't know. But I think from time to time I have some really lucid and realistic seeming dreams, and there always seems to be like action, running, jumping, doing stuff,
Hmm. So you've probably heard of because like one of the things I go in healing super soldiers is like looking at all the different places they exist in simultaneously, as well as like ways they function in this reality, like to like build a kind of uh, picture of like imagine I guess yeah, like this Earth is a big game. So it's a lot big and seen on from all these different perspectives of multiple universes, multiple incarnate beings from other universes are coming here to resolve all their stuff in one place. It's one of those layers that, like, when you're in a constant chess battle with different beings for what manifests throughout the multiverse, it eventually gets to where they're like, oh, how do we actually conclude this big drama? Of all these different chess games that like then culminate to this level where it's like, okay, you resolve it here, it resolves all these other places. So what goes on here is very important, physically and unseen. So that'll go into the chess moves of here that are multi-faceted. Everyone's that's anchored here isn't just doing things in the physical. They are playing on multiple chess game boards. Astral, dream, traveling realms, jumping, going in inner Earth, the space between atoms and higher dimensional beings of hotels within hotels, the spaces for multiple experiences in one place. A lot goes on for what manifests into the future. So seeing as like for you, and you can apply this to many other people, especially ones that are coming up into their power and aware, as they are able to handle more chess games and successful anchoring of them into the physical and in part of themselves in completion. Against fracturedness. You will find yourself doing missions in dreams, like coming back and forth, saving soul shards of yourself and other people, fighting giant monsters in dreams, all kinds of different stuff. And that's just the dream bubbles that influence thoughts and ideas that then permeate down to this dream. Astral, the same with what incarnates in that wild west of what goes on the planet and all these different bubbles of reality. And realm jumping with the tree of Yggdrasil and the other realms that exist on this planet overlaid on top of each other like a TV channel on the same TV. And all the different realms from other planets that are bilocating here that are getting in this game that are bleeding over with each other in positive and negative ways. Incurring and invasive beings versus beings that incarnate here to free the planet, free our species, understand what this technology of DNA is that we're incarnated into, the advanced technology and combination of all the genetic library of all the species of the multiverse in one place, super advanced potential technology for all abilities combined together, and awareness and unlocking the codes to go multiple places. And then repair that really, really broken down technology that is turned into a paperweight for most people, but slowly but surely over time and with effort and focus, people have been able to unlock, as well as if they're in certain bloodlines that have kept those abilities going into the future. and not muddied down. To be able to perceive themselves in other places at once, doing these things, being in councils, being in meetings, creating unity, a resolution, resolving drama, busting problems if it takes that amount of force, whatever amount of force it necessary, depending on what you can. But peace is the best option. I usually go with that. But if it's necessary, and the being's like totally mind control and it's harming the people you love, you gotta like have the bravery to face it, that darkness. And I've been noticing this with, sometimes I've viewed you in multiple cases at the same time that I've been. So have confidence in your ability to unfold into that. Even if you don't think you are doing something like that, and this goes for any individual, you can at any point in time start engaging in that. And I usually recommend working with Earth. Like people that like to talk about like going in temporal dilation, of being taken in and out of this timeline, going off to go somewhere else in time travel and complete a mission, and then come back in as if they never left, or 5 minutes, or whatever amount of time, depending on how advanced the technology is. That is true, and you can find it in the DNA records of everything that your body has ever recorded. And it will usually, this is why I've even gone into it, is because it shows the record of that, and sometimes it bleeds over trauma, which will affect the person that life. And they may feel they've been through an intense amount of abuse or trauma and not be able to heal it because they have no idea what it is, but it feels like, oh shit, like huge amounts of fear, or they were abused or raped or something. And they go into healing that, and then resolving that timeline, depending on if they need to agree to it, if it's an encouragement totally, they have to work at their times and uncreate it if it's necessary. Like if they see as like beneficial and they flipped it and they turned it into a positive, as well as did something in advanced chess move to change the planet by them incurring on their timeline. And there's those, as well as a bunch of other scenarios that you'll find.
Hey, are you planning to go out anytime?
Not necessarily just the military, but like somebody slowly get yourself out of incursions that you don't want to be a part of, and get into doing missions for Earth and resistance, for the resisting domination control that is in unity for their soul, and not doing anything against their higher self, their internal wisdom, what they want to do. And it's not like those things won't really harm the person. Usually you'll be able to control those timelines and make sure they go forward well as you anchor and you view them, you can change them to make sure they go the best potential that they could be. So for super soldiers that are coming out of that abuse of being made to do things they don't want to do, go into the faction of Earth's super soldier concept, which I recommend.
Well, I have been interviewing some of these super soldiers, and I had been somewhat dubious of it, but I began to more and more accept these ideas, especially since my psychics who I trust are down with these concepts. And so I was just blown away when a young man I've interviewed more than once, Anthony Zender, contacted me when I was at a Red Lobster a couple weeks ago, and he has told, and he wants to be do a show, and he has said that he's had now like a total recall, and then he just really dropped a bomb and said that he and I have he's seen me on one of these missions. And that just blew me away. So I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, this is, and it's not that I don't believe these things. I just don't have any memory of them right now. And also, same thing with past lives. Ever since my Kundalini awakening, there's been several people have come forward and urged me to remember these past life experiences, and I just haven't. But what I do remember blood, just as high as your ankles, blood, and so I know that I'm not sure what ways things I've done in the past, but it probably has something to do with blood.
Yeah, that'll be an understatement for sure. So, like, it's definitely not just one thing with you. There would be multiple layers, and you wouldn't be able to get through it all in a few years. But say start with what your higher self wants you to start with, because there's various, and I can help people with memory recall as well as getting that unlocked. Usually the memory blockage will have different purposes to it and reasons that you can interview in the body, and that going back to different factions. Besides, like, incurring factions that put an amnesia barrier on the person because they don't want them to remember and they want it to go on as, like, the perfect Manchurian candidate where they don't even remember themselves what they did if they're completing things in assassinations or all kinds of different stuff for them. They'll be self-imposed memory amnesia based on, you're doing a very secret mission back in time, and if you have the memory, something that wants to scan your memory, like such as AI or whatever, and get that strategy to go back in time and undo what you created, it will be for naught. So a lot of the times, a lot of this will keep in memory until the point where we clear ourselves of monitors at the deepest core level.
That makes sense. That makes logical sense, what you're saying.
Yeah, and then also, like, imagine all these time traveler factions in time that are viewing the future potential of different streams that deviate off of each choice point, and have goals for subjects that last into the future and solidify. They have a formula for what it takes to do that, and some of that takes amnesia as well as continuation. And a lot of these timelines that we're on in dilation will interfere with this timeline. Sometimes we're gone for more than a minute, more than minutes, hours, days, years, or if it's like really advanced and you have life extension technology, then it depends. But